The short answer to your two questions is no and no. Now, one country, two systems was a fundamental policy of the central government, and so was national integrity. Now, these policies were not the result of bargaining with Great Britain. Clause 3.1 of the Joint Declaration refers to Hong Kong's history and quotes realities. One of those realities was that 90% of the colony's landmass was due to revert back to China in 1997, whatever happened. And without the new territories, which of course included Lantau, which in 1984-85 was in the planning stage for the airport, Hong Kong as a separate entity could not possibly survive. It was simply not viable. So the resumption of sovereignty over the entire colony was the basis of the talks. The so-called negotiations related to the details of the arrangement, but sovereignty was never in doubt. The application of the national security law to Hong Kong was a sovereign act. It was impelled by necessity at a time of heightened public danger. So how could this be breach of the Joint Declaration? As regards the compatibility of the national security law with the basic law, in particular Article 28.1, which says that, quotes, freedom of the person, of the Hong Kong resident, etc., shall be inviolable, okay? The freedom of the person shall be inviolable, unquotes. Now, how this might work out with the new powers which have been given to the police under the new national security law may create issues later on for the Hong Kong courts, depending obviously on how the issue arises on a practical plane. But there's no question of the new security law as such, as a set of laws, breaching the basic law. Now the question will be, if it should arise, how best to reconcile the values and aims set out in the two sets of documents, the national security law and the basic law, so as to fulfill the true objectives of one country, two systems formula. Okay? Now this formula is not frozen in time and will evolve with changing circumstances. So real situations, if they arise, will test the application of the policy by the Hong Kong courts and will test the wisdom of those courts as to how they navigate in that rather complicated field. And speculation based on imagined scenarios doesn't help. So you can't answer a question such as yours in a vacuum unless you actually have a real situation where it is said, for example, that the Hong Kong police, in exercise of new powers of investigation, of entry into premises and so on, have breached the article in the basic law, Article 28.1, which says that the freedom of the person shall be inviolable, and the other provisions safeguarding the sanctity of private homes and so on. Unless you have an actual situation where that becomes a real issue, the matter cannot be debated in a vacuum.